Okay, be honest. How many times have you been scrolling endlessly through social media and you just start feeling like you're falling behind
Yeah.
in some kind of invisible race, like everybody else has it figured out and you're just stuck?
Right.
If that sounds familiar, well, you are so not alone.
Yeah.
And that is why today we are doing a deep dive into Stop Scrolling, Start Living.
Ooh.
It's a book that really resonated with me, and I think it might have some key insights for you too.
It's so interesting, isn't it? That feeling, like you said, like an invisible race. It just seems amplified, especially for millennials and Gen Z,
Right.
wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
They're navigating this whole landscape of hustle culture where everyone's supposed to be constantly grinding, striving for more.
Yeah.
Then you add in the unrealistic standards that are often portrayed on social media.
Oh, yeah.
And it's no wonder so many people are struggling with self-doubt and comparison.
The book really hits the nail on the head with that, calling it the comparison trap.
Right.
But what I found so liberating was the core message of the book. Like, you don't have to play that game.
Yeah.
You don't have to live up to anyone else's highlight reel.
It's like this collective exhale, isn't it? Finally acknowledging that we're all holding our breath, trying to keep up with some impossible pace.
Right.
What I find so interesting, though, is the book doesn't just tell us to stop comparing. It actually digs into the why behind it, behind this trap.
Right.
The way these toxic thought patterns, the self-criticism, and the constant comparing just becomes so automatic.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that in your own life?
Oh, absolutely.
Like when the inner critic just takes over.
It's like it has a default setting of not good enough.
Yeah.
And the book makes this really good point that those default settings are often just fueled by social media.
Uh-huh.
It's like you're constantly being bombarded by these curated versions of perfection.
Yeah, almost like a funhouse mirror.
Uh-huh.
Just distorting our perception of what reality is.
Right.
We see these snippets of other people's lives, their successes, their picture-perfect moments.
Yeah.
And then we start to measure ourselves against these, like, impossible standards.
Right.
We forget that what we're seeing is often carefully constructed, you know?
Yeah.
It's a facade. It's not the full picture.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking, why doesn't my life look like that?
Right.
And the book doesn't shy away from the consequences of those thought patterns. It talks about how they can really hold us back, how they can make us feel paralyzed by fear,
Yeah.
inadequate,
Yeah.
stuck in this loop of dissatisfaction.
It's almost like they become self-fulfilling prophecies, right? We start believing these negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And then our actions, our choices, and even our opportunities start to reflect that belief.
Totally.
We might avoid taking risks, you know,
Right.
pursuing our passions,
Uh-huh.
or even celebrating our own accomplishments.
Yeah.
Because we've just internalized this idea. We're not enough.
It's heartbreaking, honestly, to think of all the potential that just gets stifled
Yeah.
by this constant self-criticism.
Right.
But this is where the book takes a turn
Okay.
towards hope, towards being helpful.
Mm.
It offers this really practical roadmap for quieting that inner critic. It lays out 5 actionable steps.
Okay.
And what really struck me was how doable they actually seemed.
So they're not vague.
Yeah.
They're not like these abstract concepts. These are tangible actions. We can take these and shift our mindset and reclaim our power.
Right.
It all starts with just simply noticing the patterns of your inner critic.
Awareness is key. It's that first step, isn't it?
Yeah.
To any kind of change.
Yeah.
Shining a light on those negative thought patterns
Uh-huh.
so we can start to understand them and then ultimately, change them.
Exactly. It's like becoming a detective of your own mind. You know, paying attention to those moments when the inner critic just pipes up. When is it the loudest?
Yeah.
What triggers those negative thoughts?
Right.
What situations or feelings bring it out?
It's like starting a dialogue with that inner critic.
Yeah.
Getting to know its habits and its tendencies so you can start to challenge them.
And that is where the second step comes in.
Okay.
Challenging the lies.
Okay.
The book offers some really insightful techniques for doing that.
So we're noticing the patterns. We're getting to know our inner critic. But how do we actually start challenging those thoughts?
Right.
I mean, they can feel so loud, so convincing.
The book encourages us to kind of personify the inner critic.
Okay.
To give it a name. Like,
Right.
imagine saying, okay, negative Nancy, I hear you, but I'm not buying into your story today.
I like that.
Right.
It's like putting a face to the voice, creating some distance between you and the negative thoughts.
Precisely. And then, once you've identified your inner critic, the book suggests asking for evidence.
Yeah.
Like saying, hold on, inner critic, you're saying I'm not good enough. What proof do you have for that?
Interesting.
What facts support this claim?
I like that. It's like holding those negative thoughts accountable.
Yeah.
Like demanding evidence instead of just accepting it as truth.
And the interesting thing is, often when we start digging for evidence, we realize that these pronouncements, these negative pronouncements, are often based on fear, insecurities, or past experiences that might not even be relevant anymore.
Wow.
Right.
So we're noticing the patterns, challenging the lies. What comes next in this journey of quieting the inner critic?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The book dives into the world of social media and its impact on our mental well-being.
Right.
Remember that comparison trap we talked about earlier?
Absolutely. It's like social media is just a breeding ground for those negative thought patterns.
Precisely. And the book doesn't shy away from that. It encourages us to be really intentional about what we consume on social media.
To literally detox our feeds.
So unfollowing those accounts that make us feel bad.
Exactly.
The ones that trigger comparison, envy, self-doubt.
It's not just about weeding out the negative. It's about actively cultivating a more positive, supportive online environment.
Got it.
Following accounts that inspire you, uplift you, educate you, or simply just make you smile.
It's like giving yourself permission to curate a digital space that reflects your values, your aspirations, right? Surrounding yourself with content that aligns with the person you want to be.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the book also emphasizes taking breaks from social media altogether,
Okay.
stepping away from that constant scroll,
Right.
and reconnecting with the real world.
Yeah, it's so easy to get sucked into that vortex of scrolling. And this book is advocating for creating space for something else, something more nourishing.
Absolutely. It's about creating space for reflection,
Yeah.
for stillness.
For simply being present in the moment without the constant distraction and comparison that social media often brings. And it's in those quieter moments that we can often hear our own inner wisdom more clearly.
Yeah.
You know, that inner voice that knows we are enough just as we are.
And I think that's a perfect place to pause for now.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground
Yeah.
in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've explored the comparison trap,
Uh-huh.
the power of noticing our thought patterns,
Yeah.
and the importance of detoxing our social media feeds.
Right.
But there's so much more to uncover.
There is. We've only just scratched the surface of those 5 actionable steps. And we haven't even touched on the bonus section about being good to yourself.
Ooh, I'm excited about that.
I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into those in our next segment.
Me too. So if you're ready to continue this journey of quieting the inner critic and embracing your authentic self,
Yes.
join us for part 2 of our deep dive into Stop Scrolling, Start Living.
Absolutely. Welcome back. We're so glad you could join us for part 2 of our deep dive into Stop Scrolling, Start Living.
I am ready to keep unpacking these actionable steps
Yeah,
and see how we can put them into practice.
absolutely.
So where do we go from here?
Okay.
We left off talking about detoxing our social media feeds.
Right. That was step number 3, being mindful of what we consume online.
Right.
But the journey doesn't just end there.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that's just the beginning.
Okay.
The next step is all about shifting our focus inward,
Okay.
recognizing our own worth. The book calls this step celebrating your wins.
This one really speaks to me. I think it's so easy to get caught up in what we haven't accomplished,
Right.
what we're still striving for,
Yeah.
that we forget to just acknowledge how far we've come.
It's almost like we're programmed to focus on the gap between where we are and where we want to be instead of appreciating the ground we've already covered.
Right, right.
But celebrating our wins, even the small ones, it's such a powerful way to retrain our brains to focus on the positive.
And the book makes a good point about that. It's not about bragging or seeking validation from others.
Right.
It's about genuinely acknowledging our efforts,
Yeah.
giving ourselves credit for the progress that we've made.
That's such a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a sense of internal satisfaction and pride, not seeking that approval from others.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our worth is inherent.
Right.
It's not dependent on external measures of success.
I can see how that shift in perspective would be so empowering.
Yeah.
Instead of constantly chasing that next milestone, we're taking the time to appreciate where we are and just acknowledge all the effort that it took to get here.
And what's fascinating is that celebrating our wins can create a positive feedback loop.
Interesting.
So when we acknowledge our accomplishments, we're actually reinforcing those behaviors,
Oh, good.
boosting our confidence and motivation to keep moving forward.
It's like creating this cycle of positive reinforcement.
Right.
Instead of beating ourselves up for what we haven't done, we're celebrating what we have.
Yeah.
And then that creates this momentum for future success.
It's a much more sustainable and fulfilling way to approach our goals. And speaking of sustainability, this next step is all about cultivating this deep sense of self-care and kindness. The book calls it practicing self-compassion.
This one feels especially important in a world that often glorifies pushing ourselves to the limit.
Yeah.
Constantly striving for more.
Yeah.
Never giving ourselves a break.
It's like you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
We live in this culture that equates self-care with weakness or laziness.
Right.
But the truth is, self-compassion is essential for well-being.
Yeah.
It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend.
Extending that grace and empathy inward, recognizing that we're all human.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. We're worthy of love and acceptance, even when we fall short.
Beautifully put. It's about recognizing that we don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and kindness.
Right.
From ourselves or from others. And it's about challenging that inner critic.
Yeah.
That tells us we're not good enough.
Right.
And replacing it with this voice of support and encouragement.
It's funny, isn't it? We would never dream of talking to a friend the way we talk to ourselves sometimes.
Right.
You would never berate them for their mistakes or tell them they're not worthy. Yet we direct those harsh words inward all the time.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
It is.
We are often our own harshest critics.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is that we have the power to change that.
Right.
We can choose to treat ourselves with that compassion.
Right.
The same understanding we would offer someone we care about.
And the book offers some concrete ways to actually do that, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about having those warm, fuzzy feelings towards yourself.
Yeah.
It's about taking action.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is a practice. Like any practice, it takes effort, commitment.
Right.
But the rewards are so worth it.
Yeah.
When we cultivate self-compassion, we're not only reducing stress and anxiety, we're also boosting our resilience, creativity, and overall well-being.
I love how the book emphasizes that self-compassion isn't about lowering our standards or giving up on our goals.
Yeah.
It's about creating this more supportive and nurturing internal environment.
Yeah.
Which actually allows us to thrive.
That's such a great point. Self-compassion is not about letting ourselves off the hook.
Right.
It's about creating that foundation of kindness and understanding from which we can grow and evolve.
So we've explored 4 of the 5 steps the book outlines.
We have.
For quieting that inner critic.
Yeah.
We've talked about noticing those thought patterns, challenging the lies, detoxing those social media feeds, and practicing self-compassion. What's the final piece?
Well, this is where things come full circle. The final step is all about taking action.
Okay.
But not in the way that you might think. It's not about pushing ourselves harder.
Right.
Striving for more.
Got it.
It's about being good to ourselves.
I love that. It feels like the perfect culmination of all the other steps. Once we've started to quiet that inner critic, it creates space for something so much more powerful. Self-love and self-care.
And the book makes it clear that this isn't about being selfish or indulgent.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we deserve to be treated with kindness and care, just like anyone else.
Right.
It's about making choices that nourish our mind, body, and spirit.
Okay, so let's dive into that. What are some specific ways that we can actually be good to ourselves?
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's not just about bubble baths and spa days.
Well, it's about those everyday choices that often get overlooked.
Okay.
In the hustle and bustle of life. Things like getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, staying hydrated, and moving our bodies in ways that feel good.
It's so easy to dismiss those things as basic or unimportant, especially when we're just caught up in all the demands of our to-do list. But the book really emphasizes how crucial those fundamental acts of self-care are for our overall well-being.
They really are the foundation, right? And beyond those foundational practices, it's about being intentional, about creating those moments of joy and rejuvenation in our lives.
Right.
This could be anything from spending time in nature listening to music, reading a good book, or simply taking a few minutes to sit in silence and breathe deeply.
It's not about those grand gestures or elaborate self-care routines.
Right.
It's about these small, consistent acts of kindness that we extend to ourselves.
It is. It's about integrating self-care into the fabric of our daily lives.
Right.
Making it this non-negotiable priority rather than an afterthought. And that's where the book offers some really practical tips for creating these pockets of self-care.
What are some of those tips that really stood out to you?
Well, one that resonated with me was this idea of scheduling time for yourself.
Okay.
Even if it's just for a few minutes each day, treat it like an important appointment.
Right.
You know, something you wouldn't just cancel or reschedule.
Like putting it on your calendar.
Yeah.
Making it non-negotiable. Time dedicated for your own well-being.
And another tip that resonated with me was the idea of speaking kindly to yourself. Replacing those harsh inner critic pronouncements with words of support and encouragement.
It's like we were talking about earlier, extending that grace and compassion inward.
Exactly.
And the book emphasizes that that's an ongoing practice. It's about catching those negative thoughts. And consciously reframing them in a more positive and supportive light.
And another crucial aspect of being good to yourself is setting boundaries.
Okay.
Learning to say no without guilt when you need to protect your time and energy.
It's about recognizing that you're not obligated to say yes to everything and everyone.
Right.
And that it's okay to prioritize your own needs.
And that's where the book offers this beautiful quote. You can't pour from an empty cup, so fill yours first.
Oh, I love that.
It's such a powerful reminder, you know, that we can't give our best to others if we're running on empty ourselves.
Right.
Taking care of our own needs allows us to show up more fully for the people and the things that we care about.
It's like investing in yourself so that you can invest in the world. And that idea of investing in yourself really resonated with me.
Yeah.
I feel like we often put our needs on the back burner.
Right.
Especially when we're busy, feeling overwhelmed.
It's so easy to get caught up in the demands of daily life. But the truth is, we can't operate at our best if we're not taking care of ourselves. And the book really challenges us to kind of reframe our thinking around self-care. It's not a reward for hard work. It's the foundation upon which we can build a fulfilling and meaningful life.
And I think that's the perfect segue into the book's closing message. We've explored these 5 steps for quieting the inner critic.
We have.
And now we're talking about being good to ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Filling our cups so we can show up more fully in the world.
It's all connected, isn't it? Like this ripple effect. You know, when we start treating ourselves with kindness and compassion, we create this more positive and supportive internal environment.
Yeah.
And then that ripple effect extends outward.
Right.
You know, influencing our relationships, our work, even our impact on the world.
I love that imagery.
Yeah.
So hopeful, inspiring.
Yeah.
Makes me think about all the potential
Right.
that is unlocked. When we start prioritizing our own well-being, what was the book's final takeaway? What message did it leave you with?
Well, the book ends with a very powerful statement.
Okay.
It says, "You are already enough. Keep moving forward."
Wow.
And those words really resonated with me. They kind of encapsulate the entire message of the book, don't you think?
I think they really do.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we don't need to wait for that external validation.
Right.
Or achieve some arbitrary level of success.
Right.
To be worthy. We are enough right here, right now, just as we are. And it's this call to action to keep moving forward, to keep growing, to keep embracing our authentic selves, even when it's challenging.
It's about recognizing that the journey is where the magic lies. It's in the ups and downs, the challenges, the triumphs that we discover our true strength and resilience.
Right.
And it's in those moments of vulnerability and self-compassion, you know, where we connect with our deepest selves and create a life that really reflects who we are.
You know, I'm realizing this deep dive has been as much about self-discovery as it has been about the book itself. You know, it's prompted me to reflect on my own relationship with my inner critic. Consider how I can be more intentional about practicing self-compassion.
I'm so glad to hear that. I think that's the beauty of doing a deep dive. It's not just about absorbing information. It's about engaging with the material on a personal level. And allowing it to spark these new insights, new perspectives.
And stop scrolling, start living, has definitely sparked a lot of reflection for me. It's given me this new framework for thinking about self-care, for quieting that inner critic, and for embracing my authentic self.
As we wrap up this second part of our deep dive, I'm curious what resonated most with you. What stood out as particularly impactful or insightful?
You know, for me, it was this idea of celebrating our wins. I tend to be so goal-oriented, always focused on what's next. And I often forget to acknowledge, how far I've already come.
Yeah.
But this book really highlighted the importance of pausing to celebrate those victories, both big and small, as a way to cultivate gratitude and self-appreciation.
That's a beautiful takeaway, and I think it speaks to the heart of what this book is all about, shifting our focus from what's missing to what we already have.
Right.
From self-criticism to self-compassion.
And I'm excited to explore that shift even further.
Yeah.
In our next segment, where we'll delve into the book's bonus section about being good to yourself. We'll uncover some practical tips.
Yes.
Strategies for making self-care a priority in our daily lives.
I can't wait. It's going to be fascinating to see how these concepts come to life in practical ways. So if you're ready to continue this journey of self-discovery and empowerment, join us for the final part of our deep dive into Stop Scrolling, Start Living.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Stop Scrolling, Start Living. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
We have.
From that comparison trap
Yeah.
to detoxing our social media feeds, celebrating our wins, and practicing self-compassion. And now we're going to explore the bonus section of this book.
Yes.
Which focuses on this idea of being good to yourself.
I'm so excited to dig into this section with you.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's the perfect culmination of everything we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how this book kind of reframes this whole concept of self-care. It's not about, bubble baths and spa days.
Right.
Although those can be wonderful, of course.
Yeah.
But it's about making these conscious choices that nourish our mind, body, and spirit.
It almost feels like a radical act of rebellion.
It does.
In a culture that often glorifies busyness and
Right.
self-sacrifice,
Right.
it's like saying, you know what? I deserve to be treated with kindness too.
Absolutely. And the book really drives home the point that being good to yourself isn't selfish.
Yeah.
It's not about indulging in excess
Right.
or neglecting our responsibilities. It's about recognizing that our well-being is essential.
Right.
We can't pour from an empty cup, as the book says.
Oh, love that. Such a powerful image.
Right.
It reminds me of how often we try to give our best to others
Yeah.
when we're running on fumes ourselves.
Yeah, we put so much pressure on ourselves to be everything to everyone.
Right.
But the book really reminds us that we can't truly show up for others if we're neglecting our own needs.
So let's talk about what it actually means to be good to ourselves. What are some concrete steps?
Well, it starts with those everyday choices that we often just overlook in the hustle and bustle of life. Making sure we're getting enough sleep,
Yeah.
eating nourishing food, staying hydrated, moving our bodies in ways that feel good.
It's so easy to dismiss those things
Yeah.
as basic or unimportant
Right.
when you're so caught up in the demands of our to-do lists.
Yeah, but the book really emphasizes how crucial those fundamental acts of self-care are
Yeah.
for our overall well-being.
They really are the foundation.
Right. They are. And beyond those foundational practices,
Oh,
it's
man.
about being intentional, about creating moments of joy and rejuvenation in our lives.
Right.
So this could be anything from spending time in nature to listening to music,
Yeah.
reading a good book, or simply taking a few minutes to just sit in silence and breathe deeply.
It's not about those grand gestures or elaborate self-care routines.
Right.
It's about those small, consistent acts of kindness we extend to ourselves.
Exactly. It's about integrating self-care into the fabric of our daily lives,
Right.
making it this non-negotiable priority
Right.
rather than an afterthought. And that's where the book offers some really practical tips
Okay.
for creating those pockets of self-care.
Like what? What are some of those tips that stood out to you?
Well, one that resonated with me was this idea of scheduling time for yourself.
Right.
Even if it's just for a few minutes each day,
Mm-hmm.
treat it like an important appointment, something you wouldn't cancel or
Yeah.
reschedule.
Like putting it on your calendar, marking it as non-negotiable. Time dedicated for your own well-being.
Exactly. And another tip that really resonated with me was speaking kindly to yourself, replacing those harsh inner critic pronouncements
Right.
with words of support and encouragement.
It's like we were talking about before, extending that same grace and compassion inward.
Yeah,
And the book emphasizes that it's an ongoing practice.
it is.
You know, it's about catching those negative thoughts,
Yeah.
consciously choosing to reframe them in a more positive and supportive light.
And another crucial aspect of being good to yourself is setting boundaries.
Okay.
Learning to say no without guilt when you need to protect your time and energy.
It's recognizing that you're not obligated to say yes to everything and everyone,
Right,
and that it's okay to prioritize your own needs.
right. It's about creating healthy boundaries that honor your well-being.
I think that's a really powerful message,
Yeah.
especially in a culture that equates saying yes with being helpful or agreeable.
Yeah.
But the book encourages us to challenge that assumption and recognize that saying no can be an act of self-care, self-respect.
Absolutely.
It's striking me how interconnected all of these concepts are.
Yeah.
From quieting that inner critic to celebrating our wins, practicing self-compassion, making self-care a priority. They all contribute to this like overarching theme of embracing our authentic selves, creating a life that feels aligned with our values.
You hit the nail on the head. It's all part of this beautiful tapestry of self-discovery
Right.
and empowerment. I think this book does a really brilliant job
It does.
of kind of weaving all those threads together,
Yeah.
offering a roadmap
Oh,
for
yeah.
living a more fulfilling, meaningful life.
It really does feel like this guidebook
It does.
for navigating the challenges of modern life.
Right.
I mean, with all the distractions and pressures that we face, it's so easy to lose sight
It is.
of what really matters. Our own well-being and pursuing our authentic selves.
Stop scrolling, start living really does offer this powerful reminder that we have the power to choose a different path.
Yeah.
We can step away from that comparison game,
Right.
quiet that inner critic, embrace a life that just feels true to who we are.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up
Yeah.
this deep dive into stop scrolling, start living.
It's been such a pleasure exploring these concepts with you.
Absolutely. Before we go, I do want to leave our listeners with a question, one that the book poses.
Okay.
At the very end, it says, what is one small act of kindness you can do for yourself today?
Such a beautiful invitation.
Yeah.
You know, take everything that we've learned and just put it into practice starting right now.
It's a reminder that even the smallest act of self-care can have a profound impact on our well-being.
Yeah.
You know, it's about making those conscious choices day by day, nourishing our mind, body, and spirit.
So as we conclude our deep dive into Stop Scrolling, Start Living, I hope you're leaving with a renewed sense of hope, inspiration, a commitment to being good to yourself. Remember, you are worthy, you are capable, and you are enough just as you are. Now go out there and live your most authentic, joyful, and fulfilling life.